Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to WarrenThornton.com. Hello, welcome to the show. You will excuse the unkempt state of me today. Normally, when I'm appearing in front of the camera, I have time for a scrape, but for the last hour or so, we've been verifying some information from the Russians and other people as well, including one source inside British intelligence and also one source inside Ukraine, because there is, shall we say, something rather crazy that has gone on. Now, let's get into this straight away. We'll get into the main thrust of our show in a short while, but we need to show you this. Now, this happened in Kharkiv today, and you're going to hear nothing but this from the Ukrainians. You are just going to get over and over and over again. You are going to hear a load of nonsense regarding this video, which we're going to show you, and then we're going to show you some pictures.
Ебать! Ебать! Ой,
Now, very simply, what's being said here is that there was a strike by the Russians on Kharkiv, which blew up all sorts of people, and there were all sorts of horrible, horrible things that the Russians had done. Now, once again, we have to reiterate that, of course, we have to make sure that all our stuff that we talk about is absolutely spot on, because, of course, a lot of people get very, very upset if you post the wrong stuff. Now, there are many people that are jumping about and saying this is a terrible attack that they carried out. They've carried this out on, of course, all the innocent people of Kharkiv and everything else. Quite simply, not true. So let's show you some pictures, and then we'll tell you what's gone on. Now, everybody is saying that the Russians have carried out this strike, and of course, it is absolutely devastating. It's disgusting and all the rest of it. And of course, they've had time to get people in there. They're claiming that a child was injured and everything else. And there it is, of course, carrying a doggy to safety and everything else. And of course, there's many of these. It's not a false flag. It's an accident. And of course, people will go, can't be, can it? It's not an accident. It's not an accident. There's no way this is an accident. It absolutely is. It's a very clumsy, very stupid, and very brainless. Shall we say? How can I put this? It's about as crazy and about as stupid as you can possibly get. And the reason it's crazy and it's stupid is because there was absolutely no way, as they are saying, that any of this was carried out by the Russians. Now, I have confirmed this with our source, not only in Ukraine, one in the UK and one in Russia. And the Russians are going to release a defense ministry report that tells everybody that, of course, they had nothing to do with this whatsoever. So what did happen? Well, very, very simply, what they had was a story inside of this facility here. Now, this is in Kharkiv, And of course, you can see from the outside that it's blown up. Now, the building right opposite it was used for a storage of ammunition, and it was Ukrainian ammunition that they were storing there. So let's tell you a little bit about what was stored there. Now, three things, very, very confusing, people say. There are three things to listen to here. Very confusing. The Chronicles of Geraniums, very simply, have come up with the same things that we have. The alarm in Kharkiv was sounded after the explosions, and nothing flew to Kharkiv at all. No heat maps, no monitoring. All the monitoring channels that I am in contact with say that nothing was in the air over Kharkiv. Very simply, it was the explosion of the ammunition warehouse. Somebody must have violated the safety precautions, and we're going to take you through this. Now, there is a mayor, Terekov, who has admitted the shopping centre has not been operational since the beginning of the fighting. So this shopping centre is disused. And of course, the building, as often is the case, is used by the Ukraine military for storage. Of course, footage from the strike and a wounded soldier and a damaged minibus, typical of the Ukrainian armed forces, near the shopping centre, who used the house next door. Now, the building that went up housed Ukrainian armed forces units and their military equipment, including drones. Now, that's from our Ukrainian sources. Okay, so all this nonsense about people dying and everything else, nobody died. They all managed to get out in time. Now, we're going to show you a doctored photo from the Ukrainians. Now, the one on the left here is the photograph from the actual explosion. And as you can see, military personnel being taken away who slightly... Now, they all managed to get out in time, but of course, one or two were injured by flying debris. Now, we got a woman there being rescued and everything else, as you can see, perfectly okay, no dirty shirt or anything else. But this was the photograph and a couple of the photographs they've managed to doctor to try and make it seem as though the Russians have done some horrendous strike, trying to sort of claim this happened for the simple fact of what happened on New Year's Eve, and trying to blame the Russians for this. But as you can see from the destruction all around, from these photographs, of course, there were only military personnel involved. Louis Bastos.
Hi, guys. That is Akademika Pavlova, the area where I stayed when I was living in Ukraine in between 2012 2014.
Yeah.
It's near the railway, near the station, metro station, Akademika Pavlova, if I'm right.
Yeah. And you are, I am absolutely convinced that you are. Now, they managed to get out in time. How did they manage to get out in time? Surely this sort of thing. Let's have a little look. You can see the smoke rising first. This exploded. Now, from what we understand, that is an ammo center that has gone up. So no Russian strike, no missiles, no Iskanders, no blowing up of anything else. But of course, Zelensky's been straight out there and calling it all sorts of things. And of course, it simply didn't happen. So when you're hearing this, which they're going to make a huge thing over the next couple of days, it is because somebody was very, very careless. And because the fire started, they were able to clear everybody out of the buildings. And there were a couple of buildings that were being used to store this ammunition. They managed to clear everybody away. And when you see the damage and the destruction, you would certainly turn around and say that somebody must have died in this explosion. Nobody died. Absolutely no one. And there were people injured. And everybody's saying, oh, there's a child, the Ukrainians are saying there was a child injured and everything else. Nonsense. Okay. It was an ammunition depot. Somebody got a little careless. It caught fire and they evacuated the buildings and up it went. So that is the explanation about what you are about to hear. Now, something else that is quite funny is, and this once again shows the stupidity of these people. we're going to tell you all about this. You're not going to believe what has happened. So the Germans are now sending 2 Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. Now, these are 2 that they were promised a while back, and this has had to be a bit of a rush job because very simply what happened is one of the Patriot systems that they had was stored right next to another Patriot system. So 2 Patriot systems being stored in Kiev, and very simply what happened was one of them was blown up, and because they had the other one that wasn't already in operation but was being readied to be in operation, they were working on them side by side. So the missiles from that one blew up the second one. I know you can't make it up, but this is why the Germans are rushing these 2 Patriot systems off to the Ukrainians. So just to let you know, one of the 2 of the Patriot systems they had in Kiev, one of them has blown up, and the missiles exploding blew up the other one. True story. So we're looking there at what you might call 2 accidents that have just happened out of the middle of nowhere. Something else that is being kept very, very quiet as well is the fact that Great Britain literally helped with the USA, with the State Department and the Pentagon, launched a Storm Shadow missile today over Belgorod, which was shot out of the air. And of course, there's going to be all sorts of denials. Given what is going on, it is quite amazing that people would turn around and say that didn't happen. Well, it did. Have a listen to the explosion here. That was obviously a video taken from the car. That was the explosion over Belgorod as it was shot down. So just in case anybody ever turns around to you and says, oh, that didn't happen, it did. It was blown out of the air by the Russians. Now, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. To let you know this as well, that Budanov is now being moved into the presidential office. Now, Budanov is the head of the SBU, the man who's been planning along with Britain the assassination of Russian generals. He is the head of, if you like, their Gestapo or their secret service, whichever you want to call it. And he, of course, is very much in the pocket of America and Great Britain. So it is very much, they are getting, how can I put it, they're getting it ready. But either if they can't agree whether Poroshenko or Zelensky should take over, then this will probably be the compromise choice, would be Budanov when they replace Zelensky. He has now been promoted from the SBU. Now he's been promoted to the presidential office. What a surprise. And of course, we'll keep you informed on everything that's just going to keep going on there to do with Budanov and to do with the replacement of Zelensky, which is coming. Be in no doubt whatsoever that this is coming. It's going to it's going to happen. This is set in stone now, and nobody is going to be able to stop it because they need to replace him. And of course, as I say, we'll keep you updated on absolutely everything that goes on. Something else as well that has probably escaped a lot of people's attention, but we're just going to put it up here. Remember that the CIA and MI6 were responsible for the bombing, the bombing of the, shall we say, the so-called bombing of Putin's residence. Now, there's no doubt whatsoever that these drones, the attack happened. The Ukrainians are still saying that it never happened. The Americans are turning around and saying that, of course, the drone attack did happen, but of course, it was aimed at somewhere else, not at Putin's residence, somewhere else in the area, but not Putin's residency. Well, how did they know that? And at the same time, they issued a do not travel to Russia. Pretty much gives the game away, doesn't it? Just in case anybody hadn't noticed that, I thought I would pop that up for you. Right, let's get in to some stuff to do with Iran, because it will not have escaped your notice that there have been so-called protests in Iran, loads of them. And of course, everybody is banging on about this and saying, oh, literally everybody's coming out saying, what a wonderful idea. Iran are rising up and getting rid of their own government. Simply not true. The NGOs are behind it. It's the usual playbook. Have a listen to this.
רואה גם עכשיו את ההתנהגות של המפגינים. מצד אחד אני רואה המון תעוזה, אני רואה שהם גם מאוד ממודרים, גם החומר יוצא יפה החוצה, זאת אומרת שהם קיבלו הדרכה. כנראה שיש פה הדרכה, אין מצב שזה טבעי, נטו לבד, וזה בסדר וזה לא פסול. ולכן יש פה איזה יד שבוחשת. אל תשכח שאיראן זה לאומים ועמים וכתות וקבוצות, מהזרים לבלוצ'ים, לאחווזים, לערבים ולא ערבים, ולכן זה קר פתוח וקר מאוד מזמין לעבודה מודיעינית. אבל בסופו של דבר העם האיראני צריך לעשות את זה.
No, it's 100% that America and Israel are behind what is going on in Iran. And of course, there are Iranians now, protests, can literally have a look. As I say, they're turning around and saying that these are coming from the NGOs that are in Iran. And there are many of them now, shall we say. Here's the protest against so that in various areas, these protests against the riots. Let me make that absolutely clear, against the riots. And the State Department and the Pentagon and Israel and, of course, everybody who's involved with it are getting ready to start up this new phone war in Iran. And, of course, they're saying it because, of course, should we see any more protests and everything else, anybody gets hurt, then there's a major problem. And, of course, we've got this here where it turns around and says the Iran protest map update. Orange marked cities with protests today that have also seen earlier unrest. Red marked cities where protests occurred previously with none scheduled so far. So, of course, these protests are beginning to peter out because there are people being arrested, and quite rightly so. People are calling these protests mainly peaceful. Well, they're not peaceful at all. They've actually set policemen on fire, and all sorts of crazy things have gone on. And we need to talk a little bit more about that because, of course, everybody's looking at that and going, "Oh, did it really happen?" Yeah, let's have a look. So here's some of the here's a protest. Have a little look here. There's the peaceful protest, setting one on fire. Sean Murphy.
Well, to be honest, I think that the Iranian police, who are not known for their tolerance, will crack down very, very hard on these protesters. And it would not surprise me if they actually use live ammunition on them and take them out, in the street.
Yeah, it's highly likely that that will happen, to be honest. And we're going to give you a heads up here where we're going with this, because it's getting very, very silly, and people should be able to see it. And we're going to give you the pickup of this. Now, Donald Trump put out, if Iran kills peaceful protesters, we've all seen right there that they're not peaceful, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. Oh, thank God. We are locked and loaded and ready to go, aren't you just? Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, last couple of days, I've been defending Donald Trump over the fact that he didn't know about the what was being carried out at Putin's residence. On this, I can't defend him very much. And of course, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. Let's get into a couple of replies. Here's Robert Jenrick, the MP. These are bought and paid for Israeli supporters, of course. I've long supported the opponents of the Iranian regime and have been sanctioned by Iran for it, which I consider a badge of honor. It's a regime that spreads hate and violence around the world and threatens British interests. What interest do you have in Iran? I wish the brave people on the streets well. Thank you, Robert. checks in the mail, I think. And the same goes for Tommy Robinson, of course. His reply to Donald Trump's tweet was, yes, yes, yes. I think you know where we're going with this. And of course, if anybody's been watching 2C TV or Mayor 2C, you will know exactly what we're talking about here. And Iran are not frightened by this whatsoever. Sean Murphy.
Well, when Donald Trump makes comments like that, you know damn well that the Israelis are very, very heavily involved in causing this trouble.
Yes, yeah. And of course, we've got the ex-Israeli Prime Minister has also weighed in as well. Have a look at this. Here we go. Blah, 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 blah. Then you've got Sharona Mazala. And then you've got, I am sure that in such a case, Israel will join in the movement. Wow. You mean Israel aren't there and they're going to join in? Really, honestly, do you think anybody's been fooled by that for 1 second? As I always say, I've got a bridge to sell you, because to even think for 1 second that this hasn't been coming and been getting ready, or they haven't been getting this ready, is to be completely and utterly deluded by what is going on. Now, of course, we have spoken about this on monumental occasions and numerous occasions here. Let's give you a heads up here. So do you remember when we had a chat about which passed to Persia, the Brookings Institute paper from 2009? And what I'll do is I'll pop the Brookings Institute paper link in there for you to read it. There are absolute, as I say, it's a very, very big document. And of course, it covers every eventuality that could possibly happen inside Iran and how they would set about doing it. Now, we know that the Brookings Institute is sponsored by governments. So, of course, it is very, very important, I think, that people actually get to read and to see what is going on with these documents, because these documents, as far as we're concerned, are adopted, shall we say, by these people. And these people who decide where we're going to go to war, how we're going to go to war. This is all from the think tanks that we have. So if you look in the chat, I'll just put it in there for everybody. The link to that document from the Brookings Institute, Past to Persia, is there. So you can just click on that and you can read it at your leisure. It's quite a long document, but we'll give you a sort of heads up. The Brookings Institute put forward these ideas. As you go through the pages, you will see this. Disarming Tehran, the military options, going all the way, invasion, the Ozark option, airstrikes, which they've always carried out. Chapter 5, leave it at Bibi, allowing or encouraging Israeli military airstrike, which they've already done. And then you get to the part 3, which is toppling Tehran regime change. And it goes through 3 chapters there for you. The Velvet Revolution, supporting a popular uprising. Well, it's not popular at all. But this is the first stage. Inspiring an insurgency, supporting Iranian minority and opposition groups, which is already happening on the streets of Iran, but is now being, shall we say, dumbed down. And the coup, supporting a military move against the regime, which this, I am sure, is going to come next. So, of course, you're going to be hearing about this a heck of a lot. You're hearing how Israel want to do this, that, and the other. This is all part and parcel. It's well, Alexander says it's toilet paper. It absolutely is. But this is toilet paper that they make government policy. So do have a look at it, because, of course, if you want to know what their plans are for Iran, it is very, very important that you do. And they're not above using other people to do it. Look, one of those things I will turn around and tell you, it's rather like NATO, where they turn around and they said, oh, we're not involved in doing anything. And you can sort of tie the Russians into this as well. I'm not being funny, but here we go. Look, here we go. World Europe. This is obviously from many, many moons ago. As you can see, Thursday, April the 22nd, 1999, from the BBC News. I downloaded it for you. Yugoslav officials branded the bombing and assassination attempt. It didn't happen. The world, turning around and saying Europe, NATO turning around and saying Milosevic is not a target. Clearly was. So this is very much feeding into all the things that come out from these people when it comes to, shall we say, trying to be straight and trying to be honest. Honestly, these people make a spiral staircase look straight. They really are that bad. And of course, we're going to see more and more of this as we go along over the coming weeks. So just to let you know, this is a policy that they're going to be carrying out. They're not going to be stopping this. Okay. People think, oh, it'll not calm down and everything else. No, they'll be back at it. It's like a scab that they just cannot, shall we say, they can't give it up. They can't give it up. It's absolutely something that they don't want to give up, and they're going to keep pushing forward. Let's have a look.
אני רואה גם עכשיו את ההתנהגות של המפגינים. מצד אחד אני רואה המון תעוזה, אני רואה שהם גם מאוד ממודרים, גם החומר יוצא יפה החוצה, זאת אומרת שהם קיבלו הדרכה. כנראה שיש פה הדרכה, אין מצב שזה טבעי, נטו לבד, וזה בסדר וזה לא פסול. ולכן יש פה איזה יד שבוחשת. אל תשכח שאיראן זה לאומים ועמים וכתות וקבוצות, מהזרים לבלוצ'ים, לאחווזים, לערבים ולא ערבים, ולכן זה קר פתוח וקר מאוד מזמין לעבודה מודיעינית. אבל בסופו של דבר העם האיראני צריך לעשות את זה.
So there we are, and he's absolutely right. The idea of getting all these disparate groups together to all go out and protest on the same day, at the same time, in all different areas of Iran, just doesn't happen. Okay. If you go and have a look at Iran, you will find there are over 7,000 NGOs inside Iran. 7,000 of them. And of course, people will turn around and go, "Oh, this isn't, this. What do we know about this?" Well, we know plenty. And we know what's coming. We're going to have a little look now at the first video. This is a woman who's worth having a look at because she gets some good guests on. I'm going to play the video for you. She's having a chat with somebody else who's worth a look most of the time. So both of these people are pretty good. And of course, as I say, you're going to get more and more of this coming up. So this guy and this woman, Rachel Blevins is her name. And of course, the gentleman with her is a man you all know anyway, if you watch the show, called Brian Belletti. And they are talking about this very thing in the Middle East.
As I know that has officially released the remaining living Israeli captives. Israel is releasing hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees, and Trump is in Israel to take credit for it. Now we have Trump declaring that the war.
Now, just to let you know, just to give you a heads up here, this is a video that was videoed before, but it is important because what we were laying out and what they were laying out when it comes to the Middle East has come to fruition.
Is over, and this is supposed to be the initial phase of his 20-point plan for Gaza. But this plan also in disarming and disbanding Hamas and putting the U.S. and its proxies in the region in control of the Gaza Strip. So how do you see this ceasefire deal, and what are your concerns for the Palestinian people as they still have no right to self-determination because it's just kind of Israel trading off from bombing to now the U.S. coming in and further controlling the area?
Well, unfortunately for the Palestinian people and for people who are opposed to U.S. and Israeli policy in the region, the priority should be the lives of the Palestinian people. Just as you say, there is no sense of self-determination. They have been caught in the middle of this all along, as I've always asked people to please do follow the money. The Israeli regime and also Hamas, if you follow the money back, it both goes back to the United States. Israel is an obvious U.S. proxy in the region, and Hamas, its primary sponsor, despite what the U.S. always says about it being Iran, is actually nations like Qatar, which host the U.S. military in the region, and they have used Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, of which Hamas is a branch off of. They have been using the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas as proxies in a regional strategy of tension. They have used them, as the Muslim Brotherhood especially, for regime change during the Arab Spring, and they had been involved in the regime change war against Syria all the way up until the Syrian government was ousted last year. And so they have destabilized the region. They have used it to draw people in, divide them, distract them. But most importantly, and as I warned October 7th, a day or two afterwards, this was to create a regional.
People who forget names seconds after hearing them, it's not ADHD, it's an untrained brain.
Here is the brutal truth. If you read a book and forget it next week,
conflict that would make it permissive for the U.S. to eventually wage war against Iran. That is exactly what they used it for. And now we can see them taking steps to prepare for another round of hostilities with Iran. The war is just on pause. The whole Israeli-Hamas conflict has served its purpose, and all it serves now and into the future, into the intermediate future, is to divert resources Israel and others could be using against Iran in the service of this proxy war, U.S. proxy war against Iran. So that's what I see. Unfortunately, the Palestinian people are caught in the middle, and prioritizing their well-being will be last on the list, if it's even on the list.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring that up, because I know that that's something that you've been talking about and mentioning recently on X, and that's kind of been the big concern going into this. Well, yes, it's good that bombs aren't falling on Gaza, that the Palestinian people may get some more humanitarian aid, because we're talking about the U.S. and Israel. We also have to look at the other side of it and go, okay, what are they going to do now? And especially as you have the Iranian foreign minister saying that he was told by Russia that Netanyahu was trying to use Putin as sort of the middleman to convince Iran that Israel doesn't want war. I've never seen a time where the U.S. really, but the U.S. and Israel did not want war. So what are your concerns when it comes to the position that Iran is in and the movements that the U.S. and Israel could be making for another attack? As we kind of have, yes, we have the back and forth about a nuclear deal, but it feels like we're going through the same kind of push and pull again, where there could possibly be another attack to continue this war against Iran.
Well, a lot of people wish that the U.S. was interested in peace and was trying to resolve the conflicts in the Middle East that are of its own creation. Every single conflict there is of America, and before that, the British Empire's creation. And we have to ask ourselves, go back to square one and ask yourself, really, who thinks the U.S. or Israel actually want any form of peace? And this isn't just the same thing they have done over and over and over again, even just in the last year or 2 or 3 years. Are they just trying to make space and time to prepare for the next round of hostilities that they have been carrying out across that region for decades and decades? So I think the answer obviously is they're obviously not interested in peace, and they are simply preparing for the next round of hostilities. I will be convinced when there's some sort of, we're talking about disarming Hamas, I will be convinced when we start talking about disarming Israel, maybe talking about their nuclear weapon. No one even talks about their nuclear weapons. And again, just like this whole fake peace process President Trump and before him President Obama initiated with Iran, it's meant to make the U.S. and its allies look like the reasonable ones pursuing diplomacy, so that when a war breaks out, they can point the finger and blame their designated adversaries. And if we just had this big peace moment in the Middle East with the U.S., Israel, and Hamas, and hostilities break out, or some sort of provocation is staged, people will say, but the U.S. and Israel were trying to achieve peace. Why would they derail it? And the same reason they literally derailed peace talks with Iran just earlier this year, leading to a open war with Iran that's now again just paused.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I believe it was the Associated Press, they've had a recent report on this where something to the effect of, oh, Iran is out in the cold now as the region unites for peace in Gaza. And wait a second, all of these little regional kingdoms and U.S. proxies, right, they have been completely supportive and backing the ongoing genocide against the Palestinians for at least the last 2 years and beyond that, whereas Iran has actually been the one to stand up for the Palestinians more so than any of those other governments aside from Ansar Allah and Yemen. But it's also interesting to see the way that the media is already kind of crafting the narrative and telling exactly as you're saying there, hey, Iran is the one that doesn't want peace. And I know that we are in a time where we can look back at the mainstream media and point out all of the different ways in which they have lied the public into war after war. How do you view kind of the current state of the media, especially when it comes to that ongoing coverage and continuing to sell the neocons lies for them?
I think you brought up a very good point about how the region looks united for peace between Israel and Hamas. But this is something the United States has repeatedly done. And this is an open objective of theirs, is to take the region and transform it into a united front against Iran. This is what they were doing. This was the whole purpose of the 2011 U.S. engineered Arab Spring, which they prepared years in advance. They did not hijack organic protests. These were all organized years in advance. But like you say, the media played a role in selling the myth that these were just spontaneous protests that wanted to.
Many people believe that nasolabial folds can't be improved, but in fact there is a very simple and effective way.
Throw out the U.S. and Israel and these dictators that were working together with both of them. They just used this narrative to manipulate people and shift things in their favor, and they're doing it again. This is people ask, why would the U.S. be behind Hamas and Israel? Is to create an artificial strategy of tension to divide and distract people in a very predictable and controllable way. And they are doing it again. Time will prove that they were not interested in peace for the first time ever in their collective histories. This is just another chapter in how they divide, distract, and manipulate people.
Yeah, the idea that the U.S. and Israel suddenly woke up one day and they were like, you know what, let's do away with all of the war. Let's focus on peace. Not exactly something that you can easily buy, but some people do. But as we're talking about that, we also have the fact that it's not just Iran. You've got the Trump administration, the U.S. as a whole, in all of these different conflicts, which is now once again including China. And you've got Washington still limiting the technology, and in particular the high-end semiconductors that it wants China to have access to. Beijing is adding export curbs to its rare earth minerals that it knows the U.S. wants and needs. Now you have Trump threatening 100% tariffs on Chinese exports. Beijing is not backing down, indicating that they're ready to get into another trade war if that's the route that Trump wants to take. How do you see the current tensions between the U.S. and China, and what could this be building up to?
Well, again, this was very predictable. We have to go back to first principles. What is the primary geopolitical objective of the United States? It is to pursue and maintain hegemony over the planet. They want primacy. They have a unipolar world order, and they want to maintain it, and they want to eliminate the possibility of any nation or group of nations rising up and creating a multipolar world, which China, also Russia, and other nations, Iran, all aspire to create a more balanced geopolitical environment where all nations have a say instead of one nation dictating to everyone else. And so the U.S. Is going to continue its war against Iran until they achieve regime change there, and shaping the region to achieve that. They will continue their proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. I'm sure we'll probably end up talking about that as well. But the biggest and most important priority right now is containing the rise of China. And you just mentioned the U.S. for years now, and spanning multiple presidential administrations, not the first Trump administration, all 4 years of Biden, and now continuing under the second Trump administration. They have been trying to strangle China, prevent them from acquiring semiconductors and the technology to manufacture them. They've done this through a variety of ways, sanctions, export controls. They also are targeting and trying to dismantle Chinese companies like Huawei. Do people remember the U.S. convincing all of their proxies to stop buying Huawei, to basically ban them from their markets? And they even seized a top Huawei corporate officer in Canada, detained her. And so I just found it unsurprising, but also bizarre that President Trump would accuse China out of the blue of just one day waking up and putting these export controls on rare earth minerals, which, by the way, are being used on weapons the U.S. is currently pointing at China, to act as if China just out of the blue, for no reason, provoked this, when all China is doing is reacting to years and years and years of the United States doing this to China. And again, not because China poses any real national security threat to the United States, but because China's rise poses a threat to unwarranted U.S. primacy over the globe. And so we're going to watch everything we just saw the U.S., again, under Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump again, everything the U.S. has been doing to Russia leading up to this catastrophic war in Ukraine, we are watching the U.S. recreate and do to China.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and also a good reminder too, and I think that that's something that you do very well at, is stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, because so often people will get into the, oh, well, he said that or she did this, and it's like, no, step back, look at the bigger picture, look at how this puzzle piece fits into the picture as a whole, and then go from there. And when it comes to the situation with Russia, that's what's so interesting to me. And I know we've talked about for months now how the Trump administration has made it clear that, look, they want to back away a little bit, put the responsibility on Europe while still being directly involved. It almost seems like Trump kind of can't help himself when it comes to the obvious U.S. involvement. I mean, you've got the Financial Times reporting that Trump has gone even further than Biden did, working with Zelensky to coordinate strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. Trump back to threatening Russia publicly, claiming he may send long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles for Kiev if Russia doesn't, quote-unquote, settle the war.
Monday has helped us be much more effective and efficient. Max's group started out as a small...
Soon, how do you view the current U.S. involvement in this proxy war against Russia? Because it's clear that the U.S. is involved and not backing away from it anytime soon.
Well, I had warned that this was what was going to happen, no matter who you voted for in the 2024 U.S. presidential election. President Trump, his Vice President J.D. Vance, even before the election, were talking about freezing the conflict in Ukraine, not ending it. People selectively heard what they wanted to hear. Is wishful thinking. It was all with good intentions, but they only heard what they wanted to hear. They did not hear people like President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance talking about freezing the conflict and pivoting to an even larger and more dangerous war with China. We need U.S. weapons to fight China, not Russia and Ukraine, except people interpreted that as wanting to get out of the conflict with Russia and Ukraine, and then I guess they just pretended they didn't hear that it was all for getting ready for a war with China. But then from the very beginning of the Trump administration, all the way back in February, I say this every single time I come on, Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War. I mean, that should tell people something about the direction the U.S. is going in. Pete Hegseth, he was talking about Europe basically freezing the conflict, sending troops in to guarantee it stays frozen, and rebuilding Ukraine's military, essentially Minsk 3.0, even though he literally said in that statement, it's not Minsk 3.0, as if him just saying it made it so. But another thing that's very important for people to recall is he also talked about Russian energy production. And while he said publicly it was about disrupting the price and enforcing the sanctions, we all know that the U.S. was helping Ukraine strike refineries, even during the Biden administration. But now there's this much larger and more aggressive campaign that the Financial Times now reveals was aided by the U.S. But people should not be surprised. This is not a revelation. The New York Times admitted all the way back in 2014, the CIA took over Ukraine's intelligence agencies, the SBU specifically, who is the agency that is carrying out these drone strikes, and they always required U.S. intelligence to do so. And so it shouldn't surprise anyone that the U.S. was essentially overseeing this deep strike campaign across Russia, targeting oil production, refineries, pipelines. And the whole point of bringing in the Tomahawk missile, if they decide to do that, is to expand this campaign and put even more pressure to try to crack and crumble the Russian economy, starting with its energy production.
Yeah, good to keep in mind as we're watching this, and even just the wording, right? The Trump administration will play the game of, oh, well, we may send Tomahawks to Europe so that they can send them to Kiev. And it's like, yeah, the destination's still the same. Now, as you're laying it out there, I know that some people may look at this and go, okay, well, this proxy war against Russia is one thing, but a proxy war against China is a completely different animal, right? Even though there has been this ongoing push to decouple from China, the US still has reliance on China. That's not something that just happens overnight. So how do you see that push and kind of what the US is preparing to do when it comes to war against China and really what the American people could be in for?
Well, a lot of people want to believe that the U.S. is not looking to replicate this conflict with Russia, also with China, but they absolutely are, and all the warning signs are there. Again, people have to go to the policy papers, stop listening to the politicians whose job it is to mislead you. Go to the policy papers. They have entire papers about imposing a blockade on China. And you can see them beta testing it right now against Russian energy shipments. They're starting to incrementally salami slice their way toward first disrupting and then possibly even blockading Russian energy shipments. And then they're going to take the knowledge and methods they developed doing that, and they will apply it to China. If you look at the policy papers regarding blockading China, which is, again, the U.S. is trying to strangle China, its economy, its development, and the most direct and obvious way to do that is through a blockade, and they call it a distant blockade. And they have maps where they show the choke points all around the globe, far beyond the reach of Chinese military systems like missiles. They just can't effectively reach that far. This is the advantage the U.S. has. They lack in military industrial production, but have a global spanning military presence, and they're able to move around the globe in ways Russia and China cannot. And the goal is to cut off and strangle the Chinese economy. But as you say, the West is dependent on the Chinese economy, which is precisely why they're decoupling. So all of the obstacles, say back in 2018, there's one paper that I'm looking at from the Naval War College. Back in 2018, they list all these reasons why you can't do a blockade on China. But if you look at that paper and look at everything that's happened between then and now, you can see a concerted effort to address and remove each one of these obstacles. So a hard decouple from China, this is what they're trying to do right now. They also talked about the Belt and Road Initiative and the land routes, oil pipelines that China is using to bypass these maritime choke points. And in the paper, they said, we could just bomb these if it came down to it. There's a pipeline in Myanmar. We could just bomb it, and there's nothing China could do to stop us. But since then, the U.S. has actually backed armed militants in Myanmar who have repeatedly attacked this pipeline and are attempting to overthrow the central government. And if that happened and they got a client regime into power, they would just dismantle it. And so they already actually are in the middle of this conflict with China. It's kind of low intensity. It is being done through proxies mostly, but you can already see it's taking place. And the only thing that is going to change over time is the manner in which it escalates. And that is what we're watching, and that's what we need to watch out for.
Yeah, I think a good reminder too, as you're noting there, the U.S. has this blueprint that it uses over and over and over again, and yet people look at it and they think, oh no, these are real protests, right? That's a real opposition that is rising up. Don't worry about where they got the money or what their special interests are. But the last conflict that I wanted to bring up is, of course, Venezuela, because the U.S. can't just have Iran, Russia, China. They also, especially because it's the Trump administration 2.0, they have to turn to Venezuela. And I thought it was notable that you had the news that Trump didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize, but opposition figure and longtime friend of U.S. neocons Maria Corina Machado did. And you have a recent article from Politico suggesting that the Trump administration won't be repeating the same mistakes where they declare that President Nicolas Maduro is no longer legitimate and recognize someone else, such as, say, Maria Corina Machado. Instead, they say that all of Trump's warnings about drug cartels could be used as justification to assassinate Maduro in a direct strike. Could that really be something that we're looking at here? Because it seems like a massive violation of international law, but clearly the U.S. has shown up until this point that they don't care.
Absolutely. And we can look at the military forces the U.S. is assembling off the coast of Venezuela right now. It's to do exactly that, the same sort of decapitation strike they and Israel carried out against Iran, or that the U.S. had Israel carry and armed Israel to carry out against Hezbollah's leadership. They also recently attempted to, or I think they successfully killed political leaders in Yemen. And so this is, there's a, spot the pattern. This is what they are doing. This is what they're going to attempt to do in Venezuela. And again,
it's called Midnight Perfume. And honestly, this plant is wild. It doesn't care about cold, shade, low light.
It's weapons of mass destruction all over again, continuity of agenda. This began with President George Bush Jr., who also ran on a platform of stopping endless wars abroad. He very briefly ousted President Hugo Chavez. He retook power, and there has been this obsession with overthrowing the Venezuelan political order ever since. And they've done it through sanctions, subversion. Maria Corina Machado, she was funded by the National Endowment for Democracy all the way back in at least 2002. That's when they admit that they were funding her. And ever since, the National Endowment for Democracy just congratulated her for winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And so, and people have to remember, this is not the U.S. retreating to the Western Hemisphere and trying to establish a sphere of influence. You have to look at the entire globe as one big game board. There is the U.S. versus Russia, China, Iran, and a couple of other very close allies to those nations. And then there's the whole rest of the world.
So there we are. That is Brian Beletic and Rachel Blevins, both worth a look. The Monroe Doctrine, you're absolutely right, Eric Jones. The Monroe Doctrine does make it mandatory, of course. And of course, they will, without doubt, be carrying on exactly what is going on and what they think is going to happen. There is another guy that I will be playing in a short while. The gentleman's name is Douglas McGregor. And if ever you've seen any of his stuff, he's pretty much up there in terms of his knowledge and things that are going on. I don't know whether you were aware, I did mention that they had a torch lit for Stefan Bandera. Look at this. Now, this is very much, should we say, a neo-Nazi section with it. It's more than a section. It is a belief system inside of Ukraine. And of course, everybody's going, oh, well, you would say that because you're on Russia's side. And none of it at all. These people were responsible not for killing many Russians. They were responsible for killing many Jews, many Poles, much more than they were the Russians. So anybody who turns around and goes, oh, we would say that, it absolutely is nothing. Don't get me wrong, the Russians don't like them either, and quite rightly so. But very, very simply here, what we're talking about is when we get into it, we're talking about how bad they are in terms of what they've done, should we say, to the people who aren't in Poland. In fact, there's many people who turn around and go, oh, that can't possibly be right. They weren't that bad to Poland, were they? They literally were. They were absolutely horrific in the stuff that they carried out. Now, very simply, there is another guy that, as I say, is worth listening to. Is Douglas McGregor. But as you've seen that paper, by the way, as you've seen that paper, and we've just shown you that paper, please go and read it. Because if you want to know the intentions and the ideas behind them, do have a look at these people, because of course that paper will give you a massive heads up. Just to let you know, by the way, that Xi and the leader of South Korea are going to be getting together because of Japan being how they are. And remember that, of course, South Korea now has a Communist Party leader ever since the old one was kicked out for corruption. Now, South Korea is something that is well known for corruption, because they've had about 8 or 9 should we say, leaders that have been sacked, particularly for corruption. Yet they can't seem to sack one in Zelensky. Isn't that odd? And of course, the Americans kept regime changing those people. And of course, you're going to get more and more of that. Let's have a little look at a couple of other things that are really, really important here, I think. The Saudis versus the UAE in Yemen. Here we go. That is the Saudi Arabian forces getting ready to take on the UAE inside of Yemen. And lots of people turn around and go, well, that's not true, is it? It is, absolutely is true. Let's just get into the Iran thing as well a bit more before we go to Douglas McGregor. We did say about the behavior of the protesters and everything else. Iran have turned around and said that if they want war, they know full well that Israel is behind it. The situation in their country is now under control. And if you want to come and find out all about this, we're more than ready for you, is exactly what they have said. And in fact, there are people talking about. There are people actually turning and urging strikes on Israel before Israel strike them. So this situation is not going to get any better. They very much Israel want to push it. They've already got permission to carry out a strike. So we're going to see more and more of this. Robert.
Who's that calling for strikes against Israel? Saudi Arabia?
No. Iran are saying let's hit Saudi Arabia before they hit us. Let's hit Israel before they hit us because we know they're going to.
Well, yes, indeed. But Saudi Arabia, the EAE, the Arabs, the Dubai bunch,
yeah,
and Yemen. So what's the triangle there?
Right. So the UAE and Saudi Arabia are fighting for control of Yemen. Okay. And they're having a war inside Yemen with each other now.
So which one is on the Houthis side?
To be fair, neither of.
Indeed. So Yemen is on the Houthis side. Does does Iran favor Yemen or Saudi Arabia?
The Iran favors Yemen, not Saudi Arabia or the UAE. Iran would much rather Yemen, because as far as they're concerned, the Yemenis are what they call, I suppose they would see them as brothers. But
they're more Shia, though, probably, aren't they?
Sorry?
They're probably more Shia rather than the Sunni Saudis.
And the thing is, as well, you have to remember that Saudis have been lobbing missiles at the Yemenis, given to them by, you're looking at Saudi, as Mo says there, the Saudi, the UAE, Dubai, Jordan, Egypt, all owned by Israel through America. And very simply, they've been lobbing rockets into the Yemenis 2 a day. That's why America and Israel have got very few missiles. And that's also why Europe have given most of their missiles to Ukraine, but they've also given them to the Saudis to keep lobbing at Yemen. And when you're going through 2 of these a day and you're only building 50 of these a year, you can understand how the stockpiles very quickly start dwindling. And of course, this is something that never gets reported on. Saudi Arabia, for the last 2 years, have fired 2 missiles a day at Yemen, and they're going to continue to do that. And it's not going to stop. Let's have a little look at this. This is the idiotic Lee Williams.
Yeah, only a quick one. I mean, is there going to be any consequence of Saudi Arabia that with some of these missiles?
Oh, sorry. Come back on again, Lee.
Sorry about that. I was just going to say, is it a case that in Yemen that if they was to fire actually upon Saudi Arabia, would that be a disappointment to Saudi Arabia for actually going into their country, that part of the world?
Let's put it this way: the UAE and Saudi Arabia are falling out because let's be honest here. Yemen is rich in, not only is it strategically very, very good, but it's rich in natural resources as well.
Yeah.
But they haven't got the capacity to dig them out of the soil. Robert.
Thank you. Sorry, no, I was
That's
lazy.
all right. No worries at all. And of course, we're going to get into Colonel Douglas McGregor in a minute, but there are some other, a couple of other little things that we need to talk about. This is the idiotic stupidity of mass migration when they decide they're going to celebrate the New Year with fireworks. We all remember what happened in Switzerland yesterday, of course, where they set fire, where stupid party goers set fire to a restaurant where many, many people died. Have a look at this. Utterly brainless and utterly stupid and incredibly dangerous. Can't stress enough how bad it is. And of course, this is in Frankfurt. Have a look at this.
Valla polislere yazık lan ha. Yemin ederim. He? Polislere yazık vallahi.
You have to say so much cultural enrichment, you know, as people are saying here. Now, this is what's happening all over the West, and anybody thinks that this is not happening or this is not going to continue. This is part and parcel of the plan. This is exactly what they're going to do. They have there's no investing in this to try and keep this, shall we say, as quiet as possible, or to stop this. This is policy now. I just want everybody to be able to understand that what is going on in Europe is going to continue. The Europeans want it, the powers that be want it, the elites want it, and you're the ones that's going to suffer for it. Let's have a little bit. Lee Williams.
I was going to say, this ain't just happening in Germany, but it's happening obviously everywhere in Europe. Yeah. So when's the case going to be that, you know, these people are together and they're like, yeah, we're taking over, you know, where they've actually been imported in by if it's dinghies. But then on reality, when it was 1.3 million that got inside 5 days, and it was the actual German Prime Minister at the time, which I believe is related to Truss, when she actually closed the borders down because there was too many coming in. That was in Germany years ago. That was.
Yeah, but what happens then? The EU just tell you to open the borders, otherwise they'll freeze your funding.
That's it.
Because you've already signed up to it. Eric Jones.
Yes, it's absolutely by design, because with what's going on in the government, with them trying to put you in war and the economy going in the toilet, they don't want you to know about all that, so they have to distract you with something else. So they make your streets unlivable, so you're concerned with that instead.
Yeah, Exactly that. And here's the wonderful thing about this as well. We double checked because we've said this time and time again. The European Court of Human Rights means that you cannot jab an immigrant and you cannot put that person forcibly into the armed services. Not even Germany can do it, who want to get 700,000 people. Now, if there is a war, and of course, everybody who is indigenous German or indigenous European goes off to fight it, what do you think happens then if there is mass slaughter on both sides? And of course, this woman is responsible for this. Just have a look at this. I've shown you this before, but it is worth reiterating. This is 30 seconds of everything you need to know.
Wenn meine eigenen Kinder zur Bundeswehr gehen wollten, dann und es wäre ein Auslandseinsatz notwendig, dann würden sie mitgehen müssen. Und ich würde genauso zittern und bangen wie jede andere Mutter.
Ist jemand bei der Bundeswehr von Ihren Kindern?
Nein.
Die sind doch nicht bescheuert.